Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Kiddushin daf Chaf. We are going to begin on Chaf Amud Aleph, about 12 lines from the top by the two dots. Taruban. The pasuk says, "Im begapo yavo begapo yetze," which sounds like if he comes with his body, if he comes by himself, so when he leaves, he should also go out by himself. So the Gemara explains, "Begupo nichnas, begupo yetze," that again, with his body he enters, with his body he goes out. What exactly does that mean? The Gemara is going to explain that. If he comes in alone, then he'll leave alone. So exactly what's going on here? My begapo nichnas begufo yetze, or begufo nichnas begufo yetze. What does that mean? This first interpretation. So Marava loimer sheni yetze b'roshi yavorim ke'eved. That when it comes to an Eved Kanani, if he gets hit and he loses a tooth, he loses an eye, or 24 of his limbs, the din is that he goes free. However, that is not the case when it comes to an Eved Ivri. So in this situation, the pasuk is interpreting that begufo nichnas uvegufo yetze. He goes in with his body, goes out with his body, and we're not concerned in the event that he does have his Rashi Avarim hit or knocked off, that he's not going to go free. One second. We do know that is the din, but we learned it out elsewhere. We learned it out from the pasuk that he doesn't go out like other avadim. So the dinim of an Eved Kanani and an Eved Ivri are not the same. We already know that it's come to tell you that a Eved Ivri will not go out b'rashi avarm. You would think, no, maybe what it just means is when it comes to Eved Kanani, he should go free, just goes free. However, this guy, he's going to get double, because in Eved Ivri, you pay him for the value of the eye that you knocked out, and he goes free. Kamashmalan, that he's not going to be going free. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Eimer Yechidi Nichnas Yechidi Yetze. That's the shot in the pasuk. So my Yechidi Yetze. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak Chachikamer Yesh Lo Yishuvanim Rav Moshe Lishav Kananis. If the Eved Ivri walks into the marriage, into the relationship with a wife and with kids, then he's allowed to have a Shivcha Kananis. However, Ein Lo Yishuvanim in Rav Moshe Lishav Kananis, which again is a very interesting concept, because you could say, you have this guy, he's a Yid, and he wants to become an Eved Ivri. We talked about whether it's based in or Moicher Atzmo, because he wants to be able to be with a non-Jew. He wants to be with a Shivcha Kananis. So the din is, it doesn't work that way. He's already married to a Jewish woman, he has a mishpacha, he has children, and then we'll allow him that he'll have a Shivcha Kananis. Okay, let's look at question 9. So either to tell you that he's not going to go out Rashi Avarim like an Eved Kanani, or that the only time he'll be given someone as a Shivcha Kananis is only if he is coming in with a family. But if he's coming in alone, he leaves alone, which means he's not allowed to have the Shivcha Kananis. Taruban. What happens if Nimchar B'mana? This Eved Ivri was sold for $100. Now, v'hishpiach, he increased in value. Let's say he got nice and strong, and all of a sudden, v'omad al-masayim. Now he's really worth $200. Menayin shein mechashvin loy elamana. So let's say he wants to leave after, let's keep it simple, 3 years. So he worked 3 years, so half of how much he was sold for is only $50. But the truth is, since he increased in value, maybe he has to pay more to redeem himself. Shnemar mikesa miknasai. Now, the pasuk says mikesa miknasai, and based on that, in the event, this is actually going to be question already TB18, that in the event that he improved, he's worth more than he was before. So the din is TB18. I wrote 20 because we're on Daf Chaf. Okay, TB18. So in that situation, even though it's true that he's worth more, the din is you only have to pay for how much he's worth at the time of the sale, because it says Mikesev Miknasai. Nimchar b'masayim, let's see who was sold for a lot. For 200, the hichsif, he decreased in value. The amad amana is only worth 100. Menayin she'en mechashmin elamana tamad leimer kafi shanav, according to his years. So therefore, let's look at question TB18. Eved shishbiach or shehichsif, if he is a cheshman migra, ha'im lefi shas kenia or shas shiroitza lotzes. So the answer is, now it says over here, Hakol Hakel al Evan. We go lenient. Hishpiach lafi shas knia, which was only 100. Hichsif lafi shas yitzia. If he was worth 200, now he's only worth 100. We always go lenient. Okay. Ainli Eved Hanimchol b'kachavim. I only know if that's the din when it comes to an Eved who was sold to a b'kachavim. He was sold to a non-Jew. Fine. Actually, let me just look at the. I know there's another question. Well, as I'm speaking over here. Okay, we're not up to that yet. So I understand when we're talking about an Evan who's sold to an Ovekachavim, Hoyel v'nigel b'kroivim, Yado al tachtaina. Since he can be redeemed by relatives, so the master's hand, he has like the lower hand. Because in that situation, we allow him to be redeemed even by relatives. Nimchol Yisrael Menon. How do we know if he is sold to Yisrael when there's no din of nigel ekroivim? How do we know that the din is also that if he goes down in value or up in value, we always go lenient? Talmud Lemer Sacher Sacher Gzer Shava reminds us, going all the way back, well, about 5 blot, that there's a Gzer Shava Sacher Sacher, and therefore just like when it comes to an Eved who sold to an Avachachavim, that's the din. So too, when it comes to if he sold to Israel, the din is the same, and therefore we always go lenient in how much he is needing to redeem himself. Rabbi, Hareini kaben azai b'shuki Tveria. I'm just like Ben Azai, says Rashi. Ki have a bedicha daite when he's feeling good. Habi ragel ameimar hachi. He used to always say this. Hareini patuach umuchan l'hashiv l'shulani b'davar Torah. I'm able to answer any question. Kaben Azai shahaya dor b'Tveria. Ben Azai lived in Tveria. Shaya choref v'darshan. He was a great chacham, one of the greater minds in the world. Amalei hahuma rabban l'labay michti. Hani k'roi ika l'midrashin hu l'kul v'ika midrashin l'chumra. So my chaz is the midrashin l'kul and the midrashin l'chumra. You have these two psukim. You have a pasuk of mikesem miknasai, and then you have another pasuk of kifi shanav. So you could use it to say that if it's 200 to 100, 100 to 200, we always go lenient. Or you can always use the pasuk to say we always go strict. So why are we going lenient by the Eved Ivri? L'chayr we should go strict. The Torah is already lenient when it comes to the Eved Ivri. The Sanya kitayv lo yimach. He's good. Yimach b'maychel, yimach b'mishta, shalot teheata oichel pas nekiya, v'hu oichel pas kibor. You have to be nice with him. You have to be equal to him. You have to treat him well. You have to give him the same food as you eat. The master and the slave eat the same caliber, the same level of food. Not that you're going to eat pastakia, you're going to eat this good bread, and he's going to eat coarse bread. You have this nice aged wine, and you're giving them this wine which is not as good quality, it's new. You're sleeping on these beautiful comfort sheets, and here he is sleeping in a barn in straw. No. Mekan omru. So it's a very powerful statement that if you acquire an Eved Ivri, it's like you actually are the slave. Even though you're the master, the truth is, because you have to treat him exactly like you're like a slave. For Taisus, the famous Kasha and Taisus, the Kasha, my adain, so what do you mean that we consider it like he's your master and you're the slave? Okay, you're equal then. So Taisa says, so you only have one pillow. If you use it, you can't do anything above him. But if, let's say, you say, okay, I'm not going to use it, I'm not giving it to him, so that's midas sedaim. Like, why would you act like that? Nimsa shal karcha sarach limso la'avda. You have to give it to him. V'hainu adan la'atzmo. So it's like you actually are like the slave. The ema hadamil in achil shtiyah. Maybe it's all by food and drink. Yehechi dlo with sta'ir lay. We don't want to cause him anguish. Indian pidyon, when it comes to redemption, nachrele. Maybe we're strict. The Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, the son of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Oimer, this is a little bit lengthy, but we're going to end up getting to this kasha based on this sugya of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Bo Urei, come and see. Kama kasha v'akashal shvius. How difficult is, Rashi says, the Isser Hakal Sheba Ha'is Chayur Harasel. Someone who does business with his produce on Shemitah, we're very, very strict. Terrible things can happen. Adam Naisim Naisim Beperish Shvius Osai Meicheres Metaltalo. If you start dealing with your produce and Shvius, eventually you're going to end up losing and being down and out. You're going to have to sell your movable objects. Shnemar Bishnatz HaYovel, the year of the Yovel, Tashuvu Ishal Chuzasai, returns the item, a man to his possessions. The Samach Levechim Misecha, Ukanami Adamitecha, Davar Haniknami Aliyad. So it says right after, to juxtapose, Smichas Parshas is something in which is a transaction, which is referring to metaltalin. So we see if you don't keep Shemitah, you'll end up selling your metaltalin. Lo hirgish, we're going to focus on these words. It says, Lo hirgish l'saif moicher sadaisam. Eventually, you're going to end up to sell your field. Lo hirgish, Rashi says, you didn't realize. Lo sam libo l'prani isabal l'avlaxabai maveira shibiyadai. You didn't even contemplate and realize that the reason why this is happening is because you did something wrong. And before you even catch yourself, you're going to already having to sell your field. Shenemar, as you can see in the Torah, or all of these psukim are in Vayikra Chav Hey. Shenemar ki yamucha chicha, when you're poor, umachar miachuzasai, and so he's saying you end up selling it. You sell your possessions. You sell your land, rather. You end up selling your house. But here it says lo basal yadai, which is interesting. It changes from lo hirgish to lo basal yadai. We'll have to understand why. Ad shemoichas beis, you end up selling your house. Shenemar ki yimchar beis moishav ir chayim. So ma'ishna hasam di'amar lo hirgish, u'ma'ishna hachad di'amar lo basal yadai. Why does it change this language? Lo basal yado, says Rashi, ad shemoicher the mashma the pshita leilatanda the dark bakach. It's obvious that's definitely going to happen. There's no question this is what's going to happen. So why is it so pushed after a little while that it's going to obviously happen? You're going to have to sell this. So the answer is Kid Rav Huna. If you did an Aveira and then you did it again, it's mutter, it's permissible, you can do whatever you want. The Gemara says, what do you mean? It's not really permissible. It's like it's mutter, because it just becomes part of your habit that you just sin. The first time you sin, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But after a while, it just becomes innate, becomes part of who you are, and therefore the reality is, it's of course it's not mutter, but it's not sulkeheter. It's the same thing. If you continue to act in produce and selling and buying of shmius, you're just eventually going to end up always continuously doing it. You've lost complete control of yourself. And then it continues to use that language. You end up selling your daughter. You sell your daughter as an amavriya. So you look over here, it says Shemos Achalaf. Where do we throw that in there? Hakamashmon still come to teach us Nizaban Inish Barte. A person would first sell his daughter, Nezif Beribita, and not borrow on interest. Well, maybe not, at least in those days. My timer, Barte Migra Benafka, because you sell your daughter, so she's only going to work there for 6 years, or maybe in Yovel, or she'll simonim, but Migra Gra. So as she works, it ends up going down the expenses. So therefore, eventually she'll go free. However, if you borrow on ribis, it's almost like with a credit card, it's less seichel to use a credit card than to sell your own daughter, what the Gemara is saying. Because here, you're just going to end up getting more and more debt, because not only do you have to pay the actual principal, but also the interest. Then eventually you will borrow on interest. Al tikach mi'ito v'garmer, don't take ribbis. You'll eventually sell yourself. You'll be sold. Not to someone like you, but rather you're going to sell yourself to a convert, it says. Not to like a righteous convert, rather to someone who's a ger taishav. Why does it say it that way? So that's referring to an oiv kachavim. Kishu oimer la'aker or la'aker, as we continue to chafam and beis. That's zeh hanimchol avodas kachavim atzmai. Eventually, you'll end up selling yourself to avodas kachavim itself, which could mean either like it sounds like a non-Jew, but it's referring to idols. Says Rashi, lachtoiv eitzim mishar seracheha v'lo l'shem elohos. That like you're gonna like chop wood and you're gonna do all of its needs, but not for the avodah zarah itself. Amrulei hasam ha hadrei kra. So on this, the pasuk continues and says, the Tani debe Rabbi Shmuel haya b'haylach zevanasek kaima v'nasachavim. Since this guy basically is now like a priest doing things for idols, emo lidchi even achar hanayfel. Let's throw the stone after the one who fell. Let him continue to fall. After he sold geula tieloi, there'll still be redemption for him. Echad me'echad yigalen, and one of his brothers shall redeem him. And of course, this could also, if you think homiletically, a person could fall so far, but there's always an opportunity to be redeemed. We need our brethren to help us. The aim of geula tielo kihechidelo letam b'binav chachavim. Maybe the reason why there's a geula is just so he won't become impure, and to be mixed up with these oiv kachavim. But again, maybe we should be strict. So this goes all the way back to our original question. Why do we say that if it's 200 to 100, 100 to 100, then we always go lenient? Maybe we should go strict. There's two psukim ksiv. One pasuk says in Vayikra, Im oid ramos bashanim. If there are many years left, imat nishar bashanim. If there's not so many years left. The shanim maruba is shanim muatais. What does it mean? If it sounds like some years are long and some years are short. What do you mean? Every year is the same amount of days. Ela nisraba kasboi mikesem iknasai. It means if the eved increased in value, then it's mikesem iknasai. We go at the time of the sale. So if we went from 100 to 200, so the pasuk says im oid ramos b'shanim. So we go after how much he was at the time of the sale. Nismait kasbo kafi shanav. However, if let's say he went down in value from 200 to 100, we go based on who he is now. This is how you read it. Heicha de avad trey ufashle dalad. Let's say you worked out of the 6 years, you worked 2, and there's 4 left. Nesivli dalad mikesem iknasai. Then those 4 years left should be based on how much he was sold for. However, but avad dalad, if you already worked for 4, ufashle tarti, and there's a miyat, there's imat. There's only a little bit left, only 2. Nesiv tarti kafi shanav. Then maybe it should be based on how much he's worth now. So im kein nichtav im oid rabbi shanim imat nishar shanim my ba shanim. It means nisraba kasbo b'shanim ikesem iknasim. This my kasbo b'shanim kafi shanav. So again, we're using this drasha to teach us that this is in fact the din, that this person will we go lenient when it comes to the Eved Ivri. Okay. All right. Weiter. Rav Yosef. Darshinu Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak Hani Kroi Kasinai. You darshan these psukim mamash like Sinai. Simon Eved Bais Chatzi Bais Eved Kroim. Bamine Rav Hunim Rav Bar Chinam Rav Sheshes. That's the kasha. You have an Eved Ivri Hanim Cholav Chachavim. So when it comes to an Eved Ivri, we're now going to be getting into question TA17, which is Ha'im Nigon Lachatzayin Evdim Hanim Chacham. So what is the din? If you have a Jewish guy and he's sold to an akum, so what is the din? Is he Nigal Lachatzayin or Enu Nigal Lachatzayin? So do we say that he can be redeemed half, or he cannot be redeemed for half? Gulasa misteachuza gamar. Maybe we went out exer shava from the steachuza from this field, and therefore we say ma steachuza, when it comes to a field of inheritance, enu nigula chatzayin, you can't redeem half. So too, avhai nami enu nigula chatzayin, never you can't redeem half. Maybe we only follow leniencies, but not by chumras. So therefore, maybe even though by steachuza you cannot be nigula chatzayin, however, with eved ivri you can. Okay, that is the question. Okay, so amrule lav amrit. Didn't we say hasam over there? Nimchar kula v'loy chatziyai, that you sell all and not half. Hachinami nigu kula v'loy chatziyai. It seems pretty clear. You can't. You can only redeem him completely, not halfway. So Rabbi, imtim soler nigu chatzayin. If you want to tell me that you could do this, mishkachas kula chumra, we're going to end up finding that there's a leniency and sometimes there's a stringency. Why? Lakula, how can we find that we're lenient? Let's say Zavne b'meya, yoiv chamshin palgedidame. So let's say, let's make sure I have this down. Let's see how I wrote this. Okay. So I'll look at my notes in a second. So he says like this, that if let's say you sold him for 100, and then yoiv chamshin, but he paid 50 right away, palg de dame, which is half of his worth. So he was worth 100, and he ended up paying off 50 right away. So now he should only have to work 3 more years. The ashbach, and let's say now he is worth more, become al masan, and now he's worth 200. So this is the kasha. So what happened? He was worth 100. He paid, you're a nigla chatzayin. He paid half, 50 right off the bat, and now all of a sudden he's worth 200. So the question is, what's the deal? Iyam written nigla chatzayin, that it does work, then which means you already redeemed half of him. Then yoivle may of anapik. All you need to do is give him another 100 because now he's worth 200. So therefore, half of 200 is 100. So therefore, you already gave him the original 50 was because he was worth 100. So you paid half of him, and now you only have half left. Now, even though he goes up in value to 200, you don't have to give the whole 200. You only have to give half because he was already freed halfway. So therefore, you can give him that. You have to give him an additional 150, which means a total of 200. The first 50 is, okay, great. Shkoyach, you gave the 50. We're not saying you didn't, but that doesn't help as far as him being nigla chatzayin. Ziva Amrit, one second, didn't we say, Nisrabu kasba mikesa mignasai? Didn't we say that let's say he's worth more, then we go bust at the time that he sold? So which would be less? So why are we even entertaining this? Is going to oiker v'zol v'oiker. Let's say he was worth a lot, he went down, then went up again. So this is the way I was going to explain it. He was originally worth 200. He was worth a lot. Then he went to 100. And when he was now down to 100, that's when he paid half of his decreased value, which means he paid 50. Okay. Then he went back up to the value of 200. So the question is, now that he went back up to 200, do we say he has to pay another 150? Or do we say no, he only has to pay based on what it was originally? So mishkachas lo chumra, so that's where we find lakula. If you're nigla chatzayin, so then we're lenient because you already paid half, and now even though he went up in value, so we can say you only have to pay half of that, which ends up being just another 100. Mishkachas l'chumra, let's say zavdi b'masa, he bought the oven for 200. Yoyiv meya, you paid a lot. You already gave 100, which is palgid demei, half of his worth. The iksav, now he goes down, become omei, is only worth 100. Now iyamar nigla chatzayin, then yoyiv lechamshin benafik, you give an additional 50. because half of 100 is 50, which means you end up giving 100, then now you're giving 50, a total 150. The Amrit ein nigel achatzayin hanach meya. This 100 that you gave is actually pikadei ninhu gabe yovahu nihilei v'napik. Since his whole value went down to 100, he gave that 100 before the sale, so now he can just leave. Okay, so that is the discussion about being an Eved, whether he could be nigal lachatzayin. The maskana, we're going to say ein nigal lachatzayin. So therefore, again, he would end up having to pay whatever the original, whatever the amount was. Apparently, ben l'kul ben l'chumra. Okay. Ba mini Rab Huna Barchinna Merav Shesha. So Moicher bias Babate Chayma. Let's say a person purchased a house in a Bate Ir Chayma, in which the din is that after 1 year you can't get it back. You could redeem it up until 1 year. So Nigel Chatzayin away Nigel Chatzayin. Can you redeem it halfway or not? Gulasu Misteachuza. Gamer Masteachuza Enu Nigel Chatzayin Av Hainam Enu Nigel Chatzayin. Maybe just like Steachuza, you can't redeem halfway. So too, when it comes to a Meicher bias, an Ari Chayma, it's the same din. That you can't be Nigla Chatzayin no Dilma Hechad Gali Gali Hechad Gali Gali. Maybe it's only under certain circumstances where it's revealed, namely when it comes to a Steachuza, but maybe not when it comes to Hameicher bias be Ir Chayma. So Amalei Midrash Shel Reb Shimon, based on his interpretation, Nishma, we can understand that you could you can borrow money, and with that borrowed money you can redeem, and also you can be goyel chatzayin. How do we see this? The Sanya, the pasuk says im goyel yigal, says Rashi, b'makdish techuza. A person sanctifies a field of inheritance. According to him, when it comes to being makdish techuza, you could redeem it, and you could borrow money to redeem it, or you can redeem it halfway. Amar Shimon matam. What's the reason? When it comes to selling a field of a stechuza, shiyafa koychai, you have a strong koyach. She'im higia yovel, once yovel comes, v'nigala, and you didn't redeem it yet, so choser sol bel yovel. The din is, when it comes to selling a stechuza, if you didn't redeem it, it goes back to the original owner. So hura koychai, but his koyach is weak. Shein ulev goyel v'goyel chatzayin. So as we already established, by a stechuza you cannot redeem it halfway. So makdish, when it comes to being makdish a stechuza, shehura koychai, the koyach is weak. The din is, if you don't do anything when it comes to being makdish, so it goes to the kohanim at yovel. It doesn't go to you. So yafa koychai shaloy v'goy v'goy chatzayin. So hay moicher bias babate arichayma. We should say nami hoyel b'hura koychai. Since the koyach is weak, shimol loishana tamima. If a whole year goes by, v'lo nigala nechlat. If you just stand by the lokeach and you don't redeem it, yafa koycha shaloy v'goy v'goy chatzayin. Fine. Okay. Esvei im goyel yigal malamed shegoyel v'goyel chatzayin. So actually, again, we learn out when it comes to the dinim of being makdish techuza, that you actually are able to be goyel chatzayin when it comes to, again, being makdish asada techuza. Okay, fine. So the Gemara says like this. So Yachal b'loydinu, you may be thinking Kavachimer. What's that? Ma moicher stechuz, when you sell it, Shavakay Chashim higia yovel v'lo chazer aleha b'yovel, as we said, that when it comes to stechuza, you get your field back at yovel. But we established by stechuza you cannot redeem in half. So makta shoher koychay shemigia yovel v'lo nigel yotzel kohanim yovel doesn't go to you; it goes back to the kohanim. In adin shoher koychay she'ein levagav chatzayin. Why do we make a cut? Why do we say that that's a proof that you should be goy? You should think it's not. So malo moichas stechuza shchein hoyer koychay li goyel miyad. Because when it comes to stechuza, it's weak because you can't redeem it right away. when you don't have the ability to redeem it right away. You have to wait actually 2 years when it comes to a steachus to be able to redeem it. Timer b'makdish, you have a koyach go miyad. When it comes to being makdish, you could redeem it right away. So maybe that's the reason why, when it comes to being makdish, stechuza, that you could be goyel chatzayin. That will disprove you. Shiafa koichai go miyad. Just like being makdish stechuza, so too a person is moicher b'as b'erichayma. You also could redeem it immediately. But nonetheless, we also know when it comes to moicher b'as b'erichayma that you can't. Lo kasha. So on this, Gemara continues on Chaval Manav, Harabanan, Harav Shimon. This is actually a machlokas. Tani chada loiva gava chatzayin, but tani idach ein loiva gava chatzayin. Lo kasha harabanan harav Shimon. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at a bunch of questions. TA 17. Ha'im. Actually, let's look at question 10 first. Eved shehikne b'masayim v'huzul v'amad al meya. So Eved was worth 200. Then he went down. He's worth 100. The noisin chamishim l'gu'ulas chatziav. You paid half. V'shuv hoiker v'oimed al masayim. Roitza ataligmer pidin lotzes kamei olav lotzes lahashim hegiyorin l'maskana. So maskana, we said that ein nigoylin, you cannot be goyel chatzayin. So therefore, since we hold there's ein gula chatzayin, therefore says the answers moisev oid me'avachamishim lahashim kesed miknasav yaitze. So since he was originally worth 200, so therefore you have to give another 150. You already gave half, because at a certain point he was huzul v'omad al meya. So and that's when you gave 50, which is half of 100. That doesn't matter. You still have to pay the other 150, because we say ein goyel l'chatzayin. Okay, now question TA 17 is awesome, because this really wraps it all up. Ha'im nigoyel l'chatzayin. Eved ivri hanimchol akum. When it comes to an eved ivri who's sold to an akum, so the din is no, he is not nigal l'chatzayin. How about a moicher stechuza, also in goyel l'chatzayin, which we already said. Makdish stechuza is goyel l'chatzayin, as we said, right? When you're makdish stechuza, it is goyel l'chatzayin, and you can't say maybe the reason why is because when you're makdish stechuza, because you can be goyel, you can nigal miyad, because how about moicher b'as ba'orichayma? So the truth is, when it comes to moicher b'ati orichayma, as we said, is a machlokas Rav Shimon Rabban. So again, what is the din when it comes to all these four things? Can you be nigal l'chatzayin? When it comes to someone who's sold to an akum, no. Based on how Rav Sheshes answered it. One who sells a stechuza, no. Because again, if the din is by being moicher stechuza, you have to wait 2 years. Your makdish stechuza, where you can be pointed immediately, you are goyel l'chatzayin. But by moicher b'as b'ati orichayma, we have a machlokas. Ad kan.